All right, another great morning to everyone who has joined us on today's edition of the show Scoreboard in 15 right on 32 FM 94.9. Well, of course, you are listening to the voice of Oluwatimilei Samies. I can tell you that at the ongoing edition of the African Cup of Nations, the 35th at that, we have that's 8 teams left at this year's African Cup of Nations. The round of 16 games got concluded yesterday, and the defending champions are also through into the next round after their 3-0 victory over that Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, you tell that that victory definitely was a stellar one. Not the Democratic Republic of Congo now, but Burkina Faso. But for Democratic Republic of Congo, they lost yesterday to the hands of Algeria. It was an extra time victory for that Riyad Mahrez side. And you tell that with that victory, we have 8 teams left at this year's African Cup of Nations. And for the 8th team left at the African Cup of Nations, we have the defending champions, Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, the nation with the most title. We also have Senegal, Cameroon, Nigeria, Algeria, Mali, and Morocco. These are the sides left at this year's African Cup of Nations. And then you also say, for all of these nations left at this year's African Cup of Nations, which of them had the best performance in the group stage, and which of them didn't have the best performance in the group stage? You can pick point that Mali, as they didn't win any game in regulation time at this year's African Cup of Nations. Remember that they got the better of Tunisia on penalty shootout, winning by 3-2 for Côte d'Ivoire. Their victory yesterday, 3-0. For Egypt also, they went into extra time and got that 3-1 victory. And you talk about Senegal as well. They got their own victory also in regulation time. Cameroon in regulation time. Nigeria in regulation time. Algeria, they went into extra time, and it took the effort of a man who made his debut for them just last month to score the winning goal. 1-0. That was the game, the scoreline for the game that ended yesterday. That's for Algeria over the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then the Malians, and we have the host nation, Morocco. Well, they have one man that definitely has been enlightening their performance this year at the African Cup of Nations, and it is the Real Madrid midfielder, Brahim Diaz. Well, outside the African Cup of Nations as well, we have other updates from the world of European football. When we talk about European football, it's all about Chelsea Football Club, where they have announced that Liam Rossinier as the new head coach on a long-term contract. We discussed this yesterday, but on the show this morning, hopefully with the BBC, we'll take a listen to the first words of Liam Rossinier, in charge of a top-flight English side in the world of English football. Remember that in the time past, he has been in the championship with Hull City before he went straight to Strasbourg there in the French Ligue 1. And then we talk about Manchester United as well. Darren Fletcher, he says Manchester United coaching the team is an honor. But to talk about Manchester United as well, they are set to hold talks with 3 managers, and that's for the caretaking role of the Red Devils till the end of the season. We join our partners, the BBC, for that, and then we come to talk about some other stories. In the month of March, we would have the return of the Formula 1 season, and Sergio Perez has to come out to say that partnering one man, that's Max Verstappen, is the hardest job to do there in the world of Formula 1. And then we talk about boxing stories also on the show of this lovely morning. Well, I am Oluwatimilei Samies. Before we go further, we join our partners now, the BBC, to take a listen to what they have for us in about 2 minutes. And when we come back also, we'll take a look at the African Cup of Nations, those teams and how they went through into the next round of this year's African Cup of Nations. How many goals has been scored in the round of 16? How many goals were scored at the African Cup of Nations? And is it looking like it's going to be the best African Cup of Nations? Remember, there in Côte d'Ivoire, we saw fireworks. We saw lovely performances from different sides at the African Cup of Nations. But in Morocco, have they lived up to the expectation? We're talking about the 24 participants we had before the remaining 8 at this year's edition of the African Cup of Nations. The program is still Scoreboard in 15, right on 32 FM 94.9. But we join our partners now, the BBC, to take a listen to what they have for us. And when we come back, we'll take a look at other developing stories making the rounds in the world of sports.
BBC Premier League update from the home of Premier League football. Hello, I'm Shabnam Yunus-Jewell at the BBC Sports Centre. Nottingham Forest fought back from a goal down and scored a dramatic late penalty to take an important 2-1 Premier League win over fellow strugglers West Ham. Morgan Gibbs-White scored from the spot to secure Forest's first victory in 5 matches, while the Hammers' winless run stretches to 10 games. Here's Forest boss Sean Dyche.
You've got to find a way to win, and I'm really pleased for that. We've had to earn the right, and we have done. A very edgy game for obvious reasons. Monday night, no other football on, it's built up even bigger, with all the noise around it and all the usual stuff, 6-pointers and all that. And we wanted to come out the right side of it, and we have. So I'm very pleased with not so much the performance, but the grit and determination of a team to find a way to win, and that's a powerful thing over a season. You're going to need that.
Manchester United have spoken with former players Darren Fletcher, Michael Carrick and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer about becoming the club's caretaker manager until the end of the season. It's not known yet who the leading contender is to replace the sacked Ruben Amorim. Fletcher leads the side against Burnley tomorrow night.
It's surreal. It's an amazing honour to be able to lead a Manchester United team. I don't even think it's in my wildest dreams that was something that could potentially happen. I think even thinking about playing for the club and stuff like that, but to lead out a team is an amazing honour and something I'm really proud to do. Not in the circumstances I expected it to happen, so that obviously doesn't sit quite easy with me, but I've just to think of I've got a job to do.
Antoine Semenyo is due to have a medical at Manchester City after Bournemouth's game against Tottenham tomorrow. City have agreed to meet the winger's $87 million release clause, which must be activated by this Saturday. And Manchester United's Amad Diallo scored and assisted as defending champions Ivory Coast cruised past Burkina Faso 3-0 to reach the quarter-finals of the Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. Algeria also made it through with an extra-time goal to beat DR Congo 1-0. And for more football news from the BBC, go to bbc.com/football.
BBC Premier League update from the home of Premier League football.
All right, today you listened to the BBC Premier League update, where, of course, for that game that went down in the English Premier League yesterday between Nottingham Forest and West Ham Football Club. Of course, it was that's a return, or that's a sight for that's Nuno Espirito Sanchez for a side that actually sacked him in the early stages of this season. That's talking about Nottingham Forest. But the results definitely didn't go his way. And the big question now is, since the turn of the year 2026, we've seen so many managers, 5 managers, lose their job. Who is going to be next? With the performances of West Ham Football Club, could Nuno Espirito Santos be the next man to lose his job when we talk about managerial football in the world of the English Premier League? But later tonight, the action continues there at the Vitality Stadium. Probably the last match for Antoine Semenyo, the Ghanaian international, against Tottenham Football Club Brentford, after their stellar performance also at Everton last weekend. They'll be up against Sunderland also this season. Remember, for Sunderland, they are seated in European places. Crystal Palace also will be open to overturn their poor season with the visit of Aston Villa. Everton against the Wolverhampton Wanderers, Fulham against Chelsea, Manchester City against Brighton and Hove Albion. One man, his season is over, and then for another, he said to me, it's just about a few weeks out of action. That's talking about Ruben Diaz. But Burnley will be up against Manchester United under Darren Fletcher, and Newcastle will be up against Leeds United. In the Italian Serie A, games went down yesterday, and for Como, Cesc Fabregas are doing the Lord's work. Well, they defeated Pisa 3-0. AS Roma also defeated Lecce by 2-0. Dovbyk and Evan Ferguson were on target in that game, and Juventus also defeated Sassuolo by 3-0. Later today, the action continues also there in the Italian Serie A, with Bologna up against Atlanta, Napoli against Verona, Lazio against Fiorentina, Parma against Inter Milan, and Torino will be up against Udinese. The Nigeria Premier Football League action is set to continue later today, and the biggest one for today, and that's Shooting Stars against Eyimba. Well, Abia Warriors will be up against Plateau United, Barao against Niger Tornadoes, El Kanami Warriors against Bayelsa United, Katsina United will be up against Kun Khalifat, and we also have Kwara United against the Bendel Insurance, Rangers against the Rivers United. That's another big game you should look out for in the Nigeria Premier Football League. Wiki Tourist will be up against the Warri Wolves. All right, let's leave a bit of football action now and talk about the world of basketball, where LeBron James has scored 30 points in the early hours of today. And look at Donkey also capped this 30 points, a 10 assist performance with a pair of off-balance, a bailout 3 seconds as the shot clock wound down. And the Los Angeles Lakers held off their really New Orleans Pelicans to 111-103 victory. That was in the early hours of today. And also with that, you can tell that it has been a great performance also for the LA Lakers. That's in recent time. A third straight win. As of course, you tell that victory also is good for them. So for the results, the Dallas Mavericks also defeated the Sacramento Kings 100-98. The Memphis Grizzlies got the better of the San Antonio Spurs 106-105. The Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Miami Heat 122-94. The Washington Wizards got the better of the Orlando Magic 120-112. And with this 4 points deficit, while the Cleveland Cavaliers defeated the Indiana Pacers 120-116. All right, quickly moving to the world of Formula One. Sergio Perez of the Red Bull. He has said that being a teammate to Max Verstappen was the worst job there is in Formula One. Perez was beside Verstappen for 4 years at Red Bull before being dropped at the end of the 2024 season with 2 years left in his contract. And Perez is definitely returning to the world of Formula One for the year 2026 with a new team, that's Cadillac. Well, in the words of Sergio Perez said, I was on the best team, but it was complicated because being Max Verstappen's teammate at the Red Bull is the worst job there is in Formula One. I knew I was up against a Perez. I told that talking about he knew what he was up against, and of course everything happens to just go in the favor of Max Verstappen. But we'll come later in the afternoon and also discuss about the chances of the 8 teams left at this year's African Cup of Nations, how they can make it through. But of course for the seedings, how those teams are going to face off against each other at the next round of the African Cup of Nations. I tell you that for the Super Eagles of Nigeria would be up against that's Algeria. Egypt will be up against Ivory Coast. Cameroon against Morocco, and Mali would be up against Senegal. This is how far we can go on today's edition of the show. Scored in 15 right on 32 FM 94.9. I am Samies, your sports captain. Till meet later in the afternoon 3:30.